This is just a brief review of right triangles and trigonometry that we are going to need for physics this year. If you have any questions, please come and see me. If this is something that you have not seen before, there's not a whole lot of information, but we need to make sure that you have the skills you need to be successful in class. So first of all, hopefully you remember right triangles. That's what we're going to be talking about, just right triangles. A right triangle is any triangle that has a right angle. Remember, a right angle is 90 degrees. We represent it with that little square block in a triangle. All right, so first of all, we can relate the sides of our triangle using the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b are our two legs, or our two shortest sides of a right triangle. They include the 90-degree angle, and c is our hypotenuse, or our longest side of the triangle that is across from the 90-degree angle. So if you have a relationship or information where you can use the Pythagorean theorem, by all means go ahead and use it. We do find that the Pythagorean theorem doesn't help us when we're looking for angles, and sometimes we don't know two sides of a triangle. Maybe we can use some other help to be able to determine that, and that's when we come into using our trig functions. So if you remember your trig functions from either geometry or if you've covered them in trig class, we have three that we're going to use in class, and they're the only three, and they are sine, cosine, and tangent of an angle. Those trig functions express a relationship between two lengths of the sides of the triangle. So the sine, for example, is the ratio of the opposite side, the side that is opposite the angle, over the hypotenuse. The cosine of an angle is the ratio of the length of the side adjacent to the angle over the hypotenuse. And last but not least, the tangent of an angle is the ratio between the side that is opposite the angle divided by the side that is adjacent to the angle. When you know side lengths and you're looking for angles, you can use the inverse of the trig function. Meaning, if I know the two sides that describe the sine of the angle, I can take the ratio, and then I can use my calculator to take the inverse function to tell me the measure of the angle that has that ratio value as its sine. Okay, let's go through a couple of examples just to make sure everybody's okay. Let's look at this first one. We have a right triangle, we have the hypotenuse, we have one other angle besides the right angle, and we have an unknown side value x that we're asked to determine. So let's look at what we should use. We can't use the Pythagorean theorem because we don't know the third side, and we need to have two sides to use the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to use our trig functions. Which trig function should we use? Well, let's look at what we know. We have an angle here, 73 degrees. We are looking for the length of the side that is adjacent to that angle, and we know the hypotenuse of the triangle. So probably we should use the trig function that relates the adjacent side to the hypotenuse, which would be cosine. So we would know that the cosine of 73 degrees is equal to the length of the adjacent side, which is x, what we are trying to find out, divided by the length of our hypotenuse, 6. Through some cross multiplication, all right, it helps to remember that this is really a ratio to and to cross multiply. You would get x equals 6 times the cosine of 73 degrees. Again, use your calculator. Make sure that you are in degree mode, not in radian mode, and you should get that x has a length of 1.8 units. Whatever the units are for your hypotenuse would be what the units are for your adjacent side. Here's where you use your common sense and you go back and check. Did I do something right? Well, the hypotenuse is the largest side in the right triangle. So as a result, your adjacent side should be less than the hypotenuse. Is 1.8 less than 6? Yes. So I must have done something right. Okay. Let's go on to another one. Here we have another triangle. In this case, we are given one angle in addition to our right angle. We have the length of the adjacent side of that angle, and then we are asked to find the length of the hypotenuse. So again, we have information relating the adjacent and the hypotenuse, so we're going to use the cosine function again. the cosine of 72 degrees, all right, is going to be equal to the length of my adjacent side divided by the length of my hypotenuse. Here's where you've got to watch with your cross multiplication. When you did your algebra, remember you're solving for the guy in the bottom. So as a result, you would get x times cosine of 72 degrees equals 6, and then finally x would equal 6 divided by the cosine of 72 degrees. All right, when I put that into my calculator, I get the length of my hypotenuse is 19.4 units. Again, whatever units of measurement my adjacent side is in, that would be the units of measurement that my hypotenuse comes out in. Go back and check, does it make sense? My adjacent leg, it's a leg, it's one of the shorter lengths of the triangle. My hypotenuse should be greater than it. Is it greater? Yes. Now, if you were asked to find maybe the other leg, do you have to use a trig function? No. You could use your Pythagorean theorem because you have enough information now. All right. Last but not least, this one is trying to find out the measure of the angle. So it's asking you to figure out how many degrees is angle A. So here's where we're going to use one of those inverse functions. So I know that the measure of angle A is equal to one of the inverse functions, and in this case I'm given information that is the opposite side to angle A and the adjacent side to angle A, and my trig function that relates opposite to adjacent is tangent. So I'm going to use tangent inverse of the opposite side, which is 27, divided by the adjacent side, which is 38. Plug that guy into my calculator, and I find that the measure of angle A is about 35.4 degrees. All right, remember you are always trying to find an angle measurement, so the unit, if you want to call it here, is a degree. You should be realizing that you're finding an angle. Hopefully that helps for review. If you have any questions, please come and see me.